Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rodney James for MMAsoldier.net. And we're joined here by John Burke, a man who needs no introduction. In fact, if you don't know who he is, you probably don't follow my website to begin with. So we'll be checking out the comments section. If you have any questions for Mr. Burke, please feel free to ask. And I want to thank you, sir. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to meet with me.
Absolutely, dude. Appreciate you having me on your show. I know we go back and forth on Twitter a lot, engaging a lot of people out there in regards to stupid things said over the interwebs, but it's finally a pleasure to get to talk with you one-on-one, dude.
Yeah, same here. It's great, man. You and I have a similar background in combat arms and as drill sergeants. That's kind of how, I think that's how you got on my radar to begin with, you know. For the longest time, you had that as your profile pic, so very, very cool. I want to talk to you about that. But first, I want to just give a quick introduction to who I am and what this is. MMA Soldier is a network of soldiers, veterans, martial artists, any fans of combat sports. We're bringing you the fight on the front lines and in the trenches. I primarily identify myself as an MMA broadcast journalist, among other things. You know, I do a little acting. I'm also a musician, and of course, I'm a soldier. Part-time these days, though I did start active duty at Fort Bragg back when I was in E-nothing to E5. But I write for MMA Latest News. I do some freelance work. I cover UFC events, Bellator events. I've interviewed dozens of UFC fighters, Bellator fighters, Legacy, all the top fighters out there. But this is kind of my solo project. I started at the beginning of January, so it's just been a couple of months, and we've hit about 2,000 likes on Facebook already. So the veterans and the soldiers are really coming out of the woodwork and showing support, and I really appreciate that. Of course, the website is MMAsoldier.net, and you can follow me on Twitter right here, MMAsoldier138. So that being said, Mr. Burke, for my solo project, for my brand, you're actually the first guest, and as I said, this is kind of my place to do whatever the fuck I want, talk about whatever I want. I don't have to just stick to MMA. We can get into politics. We can get into whatever we want, keep you here as long as you want to be here. Or as little as you want to be here. So in a way, I think that makes you actually a perfect guest. Wouldn't you say?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you know me. I'm not short-winded, dude. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm more than happy to share my beliefs, my ideas with whatever they may be and what topic it may be. But no, fire away, dude. Let's do it. I'm honored to be the first guest.
You don't pull punches, and you're quite controversial. So we're going to get into some of that. But yeah, I've got some great guests. That are committed. I talked to Tim Kennedy a few weeks ago. You know who Tim Kennedy is, I'm sure.
I do. Yes.
Okay. UFC fighter, Green Beret, sniper, just all around badass. Those are the kinds of people I like to have on the show. So, yeah, like I mentioned before, you and I are both veterans.
And myself in the same category as Tim Kennedy. That's
true.
You're talking front, you're talking Green Beret, so it's like, no.
I know, right? I know. I feel guilty sometimes when people see me. I get self-conscious when I'm in uniform, and I try not to really be anywhere in the civilian sector in uniform, but when I do find myself there, people say, thank you for your service. I'm like, no, listen, there are way bigger, more badder dudes out there than me, but, you know, the drill sergeant badge carries a lot of respect. You yourself wore the hat, so you know.
Yeah, it's, I don't think a lot of people understand the amount of work that goes into. I didn't until I actually was a drill sergeant in regards to seeing how much work and time and effort is put into training these young kids and forming them into being, good, functioning, strong, psychologically and physically strong soldiers. And then it definitely makes you have a much deeper appreciation for what drill sergeants do. It's definitely a thankless job. Yeah. It's definitely a job that creates a lot of issues at the home life. A lot of divorces occur because of it. Because it's like a 2-year deployment. You're home, but you're not home. You're there from Monday through Sunday, from 4 o'clock to sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night, 6, 7 days a week.
If you're a good drill sergeant, that's what you should be doing. So I know you are, because man, I'm telling you, when me and my battle used to leave, man, like the whole entire parking lot full, with the other cadre was like empty. It was like me and him and then like the CQ guys, because we really gave a shit. We stayed there. We put in the extra long hours. I was really influenced by the Marine Corps style. I think I'm sure you can agree, the Army has gotten really pussy whipped. Even the Fort Benning side of it, which I know is where you're from.
Yeah.
Were you on the trail there? Because I know you're an infantry guy.
Yeah. It was when I was on the trail, I started seeing the effects of the politically correct movement infiltrating the ranks and started to slowly decay from the inside due to more so along the lines of just putting more faith and value in emotional reactions versus fact and logic. And when I saw that, it was beginning to do the moral decay of the military, much less society. When you allow betas to dictate how alphas should act, how they should train, how they should fight wars, it's never going to work out. We're different. We're built different. We're programmed differently. But I feel a lot of the problems stem from this pandering to the weak, if you will, pandering to those that create issues where issues don't exist. That's the problem that we have, even in today's society. But yes, in regards to the Army bending to the whims, it's just been announced yesterday, actually, did a podcast on it, as far as how basic training is now no longer going to use the hand grenade qualification nor navigation qualification courses as being determining factors on whether or not a soldier graduates basic training or not. And to me, it's like you're basically saying that if that soldier can't employ a hand grenade 25 to 30 meters or navigate using a map, they should still graduate basic trainings. Then what purpose do we have? What reasons do we have standards for to begin with then? This is now pandering to weakness. It's pandering to those that can't conform to the military way of life or think like a military soldier, for example, or like a soldier. And it's become disgusting to see. It's become it's again, I don't like blaming the masses for the actions of the few, but a lot of this is stemming from the officer corps. A lot of this is stemming from these policies and procedures being put into place where a lack of experience and understanding of what it takes to train and make a soldier is clearly lacking. They have no experience in it, and it's becoming very aggravating, if you will. And I can understand why a lot of drill sergeants, a lot of good NCOs, a lot of good leaders are leaving the military because they're tired of this. They're tired of this political correct movement handcuffing them, making them unable to function as they need to function in regards to fight this nation's battles effectively and as safely as possible. So,
oh, believe me, I could add a million things to that list, and I'm sure you could as well. I think I left at a good time. You know, I think 2010 was when I really started to see some major changes. Listen, I'm all for, I guess, opening up the ranks to all genders in a sense, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a reason why. I was a 13 Bravo when I was enlisted, you know? And I think there's a reason why that was it was 100% male environment. It's just a very crude, just a very manly thing, man. And not to say that a female couldn't do it. Trust me, I know females that could hump those bullets better than a lot of pussy-whipped males can. However, it's just a reason to keep it separate, I think. And I don't think there's really a lot of females that even have the desire to do a job like that, or much less, maybe I've seen a lot of girls go through sapper school. I mean, really, really tough females, that I've worked with, because when I commissioned, I became an engineer, and of course, I know you'll give me shit for going to the dark side, but in my defense, what I always say when I see like another badge or a sergeant major, I say, look, somebody had to come over here and show these fuckers what right looks like. But
sure.
In all seriousness, it is a good background. I was a sergeant first class, so it's a good background to go from that to officer. It, commands a lot of respect. Of course, the drill sergeant badge commands a lot of respect and things like that. But it's also about backing it up, backing up those standards. And yeah, I don't want to ramble, but for me, I got activated because I went to the reserves after active duty. I got activated in 2008. I was on the trail at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is my old stomping grounds, of course, because I was artillery. So it was a perfect fit for me. But they did away with OSIT, so it was only BCT. And then they started to integrate the support MOSs as well, which was a bit of a culture shock for me. And I know you know what I'm talking about, because it's just there's a certain way of doing things. And then you have to start working alongside with those type of soldiers. Nothing wrong with them. There's a need for them, but they're just a different breed. We speak a different language. And then when they started to get ready to bring females to Fort Sill to train, to integrate the basic training, which I still disagree with, I think is a horrible idea. The Marine Corps keeps them completely separate, males and females, for basic training, for boot camp. I think that's that's necessary. It's needed. It creates a lot of problems when you put them together. Yeah. But they also integrated female drill sergeants to work with us as we were sort of getting ready to unfold that. Luckily, I got out of there, and again, no disrespect to female soldiers. I have a lot of respect for them. But for me personally, I was a very vulgar drill sergeant. I was very combat arms minded, and for me, my style just probably would have gotten me in trouble. I wouldn't have gotten in trouble in the way that you hear about some guys where they, have sexual relations or whatever the case may be. I'm a married man. I'm not going to throw away my career, and certainly not my marriage, for some private. But people do. But what I mean is, I think I'm just a little too brash, and I hate to say, would have been a little obsolete. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree, because let's face it, what we train for is ultimately it's war, it's combat. That should be our main focal point when we conduct any type of training. And with combat comes the worst that man has to offer. The worst language, the worst actions.
You mean the enemy doesn't give a shit if we're offended? Is that what you're saying?
No, pretty much not. I don't think the enemy really gives too much of...
Okay.
They don't give too much care or concern to whether or not you're offended at their religion or... but you're absolutely right. It definitely fosters a male-dominated environment to where we've created a culture that's been around since the dawn of man, that it's this go-to for the alpha male. Now, I mean, it does. We've seen, for example, homosexual soldiers. We've seen a change in that policy that before was definitely rebuffed, if you will, by a lot of people. And I remember myself being against it, saying, this is. But then I think the more I start to understand the concept of your sexuality doesn't define you. Instead, it's them wanting to serve their country. I can support that, and I understood, and I had to change my way of thinking. But then we also have to understand that it has to be universally understood that your sexuality has nothing to do with your ability to serve, your capacity. Just like your sexuality in the modern-day Olympics has nothing to do with your winning a gold medal. I don't care that you like men. I don't care that you're a woman that likes women. I care about the fact that you went out and you represented us and you brought home a gold, and you did so from hours and months and years of dedicated training. But unfortunately, a lot of people, and this is another reason why I got out, use these cards of sexuality, of race, of sex itself, to basically get what they want. And that's the thing that I had a huge problem with. I saw it as, never saw it really so much as a drill sergeant, but as an SGL at Fort Stewart, I saw the cards get dropped quite often. And then rather than stand up and rebut these things through actually saying, provide the evidence and the proof that you're suggesting exists, it was just, let's keep them happy. I don't want any controversy. We need to appease these people. And I got tired of that. I got sick and tired of once more watching people bend to the whims of people trying to get over on the military. And I just got tired of it. And so we're seeing that occur more often now, that we are now pandering to the weak. And I hate it.
Yeah, I think that's a mantra that certainly defines you. Pandering to the weak is it's not a good practice in the military for sure. No. And it goes back to what I was saying, and I used to reinforce this a lot with the soldiers, with the privates in the basic training environment, and to this day, of course, I'm an officer and I lead soldiers now. I continue to do so in the reserve, and I say, look, I might offend you. I'm a little bit vulgar and probably crazy too. However, I will tell you this: I do care about you, and I care very much about your safety and your readiness, and I want you to know the enemy doesn't give a shit if your wife is pregnant or if she's sleeping with your neighbor. The enemy doesn't give a shit if you're having a bad day. Doesn't give a shit that you miss your kids. He is trying to kill you. That's the reality of the situation, and that's a big part of transitioning, like on the trail, for example, transitioning civilians into soldiers, is that you have to make them understand the nature of this business is unlike anything you've ever done. And it's not anything like what people get from Hollywood or from the rumor mill or from the extreme left, where they think that, they're stripping your individuality away and brainwashing. I mean, does it look like either one of us has been stripped of our individuality, that we don't have our own voice? Of course not.
I think... Well, first, you compared it to liberal Hollywood. We're so out of touch with reality or anything military related. That in itself, just there's no common ground. There's no common denominator. So debate can never be had, because it'd be like debating politics and religion. It's faith-based by at least from a religious standpoint. But the stripped of people, they don't understand why it's not that you're being stripped of it. You're being made to understand that you're going to serve as a number, and with good reason. You are a cog in the wheel of the machine that operates to defend this nation. And if you can't sacrifice your individuality for the span of 2 to 3 to 4 to 6 to 8 years, then you shouldn't be serving. You don't go join the military for a sense of individualism. You join because you want to be a part of something greater than what you are, which is essentially working and fighting with a team. Hence, team tactics, squad tactics, platoon tactics, all this stuff. You work as one combined team. You can't have a bunch of individuals running around doing their own thing. And people just don't seem to grasp that. And there is a lot of individuality within the military, people wanting to be special little snowflakes, be treated as special little snowflakes. It's like, I should get this because I'm this. It's like, no, you're not special. For example, it's a hot topic in regards to the transgenders being allowed to serve. And I'm in full disagreement of this. I do not believe they should be allowed to serve. And liberals out there are going to automatically equate that to me hating transgender people or me saying that transgenders should not have their rights. That's not what I've said at all. I am for, if you want to go out and you want to marry a man and you're a man, that's your right. Do your thing. Go out there and do what makes you happy. So long as it doesn't infringe or use the money of taxpayers to support your views or your ideologies, I'm for it. When you tell me that transgenders can serve and now openly basically talk about getting gender reassignment surgery, they can use the hormone replacement therapy that's budgeted anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 just on one soldier over a span of 6 months. That takes them off the books and makes them non-deployable, non-combat ready. That's not what the military's capacity is. That's not what they're there for. And when people are trying to use it for that, when people are trying to allow this to happen, now you've gone too far. Taxpayer money is not meant for you to change your body, and that's clearly it is a choice. Homosexuals will argue that this is how they are born. So be it. With that being said, transgenderism, that's how you're born. And now you're changing how you're born. And no one wants to argue that. And then we also have to bring up the fact that the DCM, published circa 2013, clearly stipulates that it is still called and diagnosed as gender dysphoria, which dysphoria means to be in a dissatisfied state of life, therefore resulting in a psychological disorder. And it doesn't make you a bad person to have a psychological disorder. It just means that you've got an issue. So the military has a strict policy on psychological disorders, how they are not allowed to join. But being that our politically correct society now says that we have to be inclusive to everybody, we've lowered the standards. We've now allowed a psychological disorder to infiltrate the ranks. I disagree with this.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm not afraid to speak on it. At the end of the day, whatever's policy, as long as I'm continuing to serve, obviously I'm gonna do my due diligence and adhere to that standard. But I believe it is a psychological disorder, and as you said, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't stigmatize people that have that. I mean, I take medication myself. I go to a military doctor to get it. A lot of people do, whether they admit it or not. I'm not scared to admit it because at the end of the day, listen, I know what I'm capable of. I know I'm a real soldier that's willing to answer the call. But at the same time, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your mind, and you got to take that serious. But I will tell you, recently they actually changed the DSM to reflect that they got rid of it. The DSM-5 now says that it's not a psychological disorder. The DSM-4 did. And it's funny because when I took abnormal psychology in college, I went to a pretty liberal school. I went to the University of North Texas. You live in Dallas-Fort Worth, so I'm sure you know about North Texas and Denton, right? Yeah.
It's Hipsterville up there. It's incredible. I think it's the only city that was blue during the elections, which was, yeah.
It's a hipster farm. It's a snowflake field for sure. We skipped over that chapter. We literally just skipped it. And I was really concerned with that. I'm like, why? Are we? And again, it goes to that pandering to the weak-minded. People don't want to know the truth. And at the time, at least, scientifically, and there was just so much pressure. It's been politicized to the point where they had to change it. And listen, man, again, I have no problem with the homosexuality piece whatsoever. None. I don't care. I've got my wife. I've got my family. We are super happy. We love it. I'm talking to you from Starfade Studios here in Las Vegas, and I got a good thing going. But if it makes you happy to be with a guy, then so be it. But don't sit here and tell me that a man wanting to cut his cock off isn't fucking crazy. It is. I'm sorry. I can never.
Well, let's take a step back real quick, and I agree with you. Now, here's the problem with our society. We rely so heavily upon these studies that have been done. We rely so heavily upon these these studies that continuously come out, and they're coming out with new updated information. Well, first we have to say who's funding these studies and who's actually conducting these studies and who's being studied and where. The number of people. There are so many things out there. Like, oh, the most recent poll on Trump shows the majority of Americans disagree with them. They polled 1,000 people in a northern state that's more liberal-leaning. Well, go figure. But you can't use that to reflect the opinions of the entire country. When it comes to DCM, I saw it coming a mile away. I knew it had been changed. But the problem was, it was at one point considered a dysphoric issue. Yeah. Now, the question is, why has it changed? If we take a step back and we just say, take all science aside, let's utilize common sense here, something that we seem to be severely lacking in these days. A man or a woman claims to feel that their anatomy does not match their psychological sex. Their gender, if you will. And they say that gender does not equate to sex. Gender is a state of mind, a state of well-being, which they said there was up to like 72 new genders that have been invented.
It's a social construct, supposedly.
Right. Exactly. So, but what I think a lot of people are arguing as far as your sex defines who you are in regards to your sex, be you male or female. If you want to have a gender that basically says that you like men and women, and somehow it's very confusing the route that they go down with that. The point being that there is a disconnect between the physical and the psychological. The psychological and the physical do not line up. Therefore, there is a disorder. There is something that has a disconnect, and it's got to be a psychological disorder because your genitalia is not confused. It's this. This is the confusion part. This is the place where all the nerve endings are firing off. This is where all the thought processing is done. So when scientists want to sit there and argue that someone, feels they should be a man, but when they're a woman, there's clearly an issue there. And I think a lot of this is contributed to, if we look at children now are allowed to come out as transgender. A child, being a father of two myself, a child is not, it blows my mind that people could go out there and say that, this child should be allowed. And there are people that are for this. This child should be allowed to undergo transgender surgery, gender reassignment surgery. This is ridiculous, and it's gotten out of hand. A 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, there's this television show, I forget what it's called, that blatantly promotes this. There's an 8-year-old that says, I just want to be just like my big sister, and it's a boy that wants to be a girl. It's like, you're 8. You're 8 years old. You don't know anything. And this is liberals out there giving rights to children and the capacity of allow them to chop their penis off. It's like, no. This is insane. This is asinine. We wait till people are 18 to purchase a firearm, 21 years old to drink, much less you're going to allow a child to modify their body based upon how they feel. This is insanity. And that's why, no matter what scientists are going to go out there and try and say, or how they're going to try and twist these findings that they have to basically pander to the masses, there's just some things you have to put your foot down and say, this does not, first principle patrolling, common sense. This does not pass common sense here. So, it's just... But the biggest issue I have with transgender serving is basically that it's taxpayer money going in there to fund these gender reassignment surgeries, this hormone replacement. That's not what I pay into taxes for. That's not what it's there for. What you want to do with your body on your dime is your choice. I should not be forced to do that.
I agree. Man. Oh, well said. And, again, it's like I said, it's the extreme, people in the science community or the psychologists. But, again, it was all born out of just this issue being overly politicized. They almost kind of strong-armed the scientific community into changing something. And I get it. Some people will go back to some really old doctrinal things that are in the psychology manuals and say, well, they used to lobotomize people when they didn't know what ADD was. They just thought, or they just beat the shit out of the kid because they thought he was an asshole. Now they. But is it the right answer to force feed them, Adderall and
it's kind of funny that people always go back and relate to what we did in the past versus what we do now. So if we have progressive thinking that is basically understood or broken down scientifically why people are the way they are, and we still have those that are in opposition to certain practices, are they themselves also, could they not be progressive thinkers themselves? And not only how things are diagnosed, but how they're treated? The constant throwback on how you're thinking how, people thought back when homosexuality was considered a psychological disorder. It's like, are we not allowed to have advanced as well to understand that and say, I agree with it now, but also there are some things I disagree with? And it doesn't mean that my response or how it should be treated is also going to be the 1950s era response or treatment for homosexuality. It doesn't mean that. And again, it's just that whole assumption thing. It makes an ass out of you and me, and people love doing that. But unfortunately, I think that if it doesn't pass the level of common sense, it just doesn't pass in my eyes.
Yeah, they do, and their argument never has to make sense either. And if you disagree with them, then you're an. I have this meme I love. I just fucking it's it's this female. It's like angry. I'm a tolerant liberal. Agree with me, otherwise you're a racist, homophobic.
I've seen this.
It's so true though. But anyway, hey, real quick, tell me your full military history. When did you get in, and what was your path like from then to now?
I joined when I was 17 years old. Didn't really have a dad. Me and my mother were not really close. I grew up in a town where everything revolved around high school football. I was a runt back then. I didn't really play sports. And then I hit 16. Me and my mother just did not get along. I was a little troubled youth. I just, no friends really. Got bullied at school because I just didn't fit in with anybody. And I decided that, since I was a kid, my father used to, tell us about Vietnam, World War II. My grandfather was a World War II veteran, Purple Heart, Silver Star recipient. And I'd see his stars, see the medals and the jackets. I always wanted to be a soldier. So I didn't realize you could join at 17. I went to the recruiting station one day when I was mad at my mom and signed the paperwork. He said, when you turn 17, with your father's and mother's consent, you can join. Forged my father's signature, mother signed, enlisted, and then was stationed at Baumholder, Germany, 1st Army Division for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Did 17 months there. Came home, got out. I was that stereotypical little combat veteran that thought he'd seen it all, done it all. It's like, I'm a veteran, I should get a job. I should live happily ever after. And
same here.
Just didn't. Real life smacks you in the face. Say nobody cares that you're a veteran. You're gonna have to go back to work just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And did it for about a year and a half. I was married, had my first child, my daughter Isabella, who's now 11. Crazy enough, I feel like an old man now. And then I went back in, and I promised my then wife that I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of a unit that's going to deploy, so I don't have to leave you or the daughter. I was in 1st Cavalry Division. I got assigned to the 504th Military Intelligence Battalion as a PSD liaison. So I was a grunt assigned to MI weenies to go out there and escort them on their missions of conducting source operations. And I did 15 months in the surge of Iraq from 06 to 07. And then came back, and then I had asked to get orders, or I had requested to re-enlist for the 101st because Band of Brothers came out and everything was easy company this, easy company that, freaking Band of Brothers. But I fell victim to the... I shouldn't say victim, but I fell in love with the 101st and Screaming Eagles and their story.
They psyoped you.
There you go. I wanted to be a part of that legacy, man. I just have so much respect for it. So I got there. 4th Brigade had just gotten stood up, and that was easy company over there. But I was assigned to 1st Brigade, the actual Bastogne Brigade. I didn't know their history. And then they just came back from their tour in Iraq. And then I wound up deploying to Afghanistan for 11 months with them. We went to the Kunar area, so we were in the Pesh, Waterford, and Korengal valleys. And we did 11 months there. I came back, and that's when I came down on drill sergeant orders and went to go be a drill sergeant at Fort Benning, training young infantry guys for 2 years. Then after that, I hit a branch. I was like, where can I go? And they were like, we really don't have anything for you except range cadre or to go be an SGL at the Fort Stewart Non-Commissioned Officers Academy. I was like, I guess I'll go do that. So I did the SGL gig for a year, and that pretty much, it was quite the experience. You talk about political correctness bleeding in. You talk about NCOs not being able to train younger NCOs and being what they need to do, or being what they need to be and do what they need to do. I just saw a lot of pomp and circumstance, a lot of dog and pony show, and not a lot of real-world practical application to lessons learned from their leaders throughout the combat operations we've been serving in for the last, then it was like 10, 15 years. And so social media happened by accident. Videos went viral, a following started, business started picking up for me and trying to push into the social media realm, and it was clearly a new thing I'd never dealt with before. Social media influencing was just something, never in a million years to be like, John, you're going to have 500,000 freaking followers on Facebook, and yada, yada, yada. Never would have thought it. Wasn't even my intention. So when people say, how do I develop followings? Go, we'll talk to John Burke. He's social media. Bro, mine was accidental. It was clearly accidental, so I can't sit there and say I had some kind of master plan. There was no master plan. It was just I made a video basically trying to motivate people, and then I made a supposed fat-shaming video, and then it got me landed on some TV spots promoting my beliefs as far as not really fat-shaming, but being against obesity glorification.
Fat-shaming video, yes. Let's talk about that, because, I mean, you're absolutely right. It went viral, and it just stuck. it put you on the map in terms of show business in a lot of ways. Which you could argue that social media parlays into show business when you get a big following. But because part of the reason is, I mean, you're obviously a fitness guru. You're a really in shape guy. But weren't you obese at one time or something like that? That was kind of your deal?
I was a fat ass, man. I wasn't. Technically I wasn't obese. I was at 6'2". I was 250 pounds, but I was fat. I gained a lot of weight. That was actually after my first tour in the military, and I got out, and I did the typical veteran thing, which is the first thing you do when you get out of the military is you stop doing PT. And then my eating habits and my eating behaviors were just horrific. Didn't understand proper nutrition. And so naturally I ballooned up. Like, I think right now we're at 81% obesity rate within the veteran community, which is horrible. And I came back in and I lost the weight through basically running. I could have lost it faster, but I was still eating like crap. But I was doing long distance running. I ran like 2 marathons, went to go do a 50-mile trail run. I broke my foot at like 25 miles in. I loved cross-country running, which is so weird because right now I hate running with a passion. Like, I got introduced to the thing called free weights. And so I went from 250 pounds down to 191 pounds to I'm back up to 230, to where I started trying to put on more mass, to where I didn't look so skinny. I wanted more muscle. Delved into nutrition, exercise science, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun educating myself, training people, educating them, dispelling a lot of these fitness and nutrition myths. That's a lot of gross science bullcrap out there. And it's just been, now it's promoting this belief that you can still sometimes eat like shit and retain a good physique, a good healthy lifestyle, and teach and preach moderation of eating unhealthy foods versus eating healthy foods and still taking care of your body while living a fun life of sometimes eating what you want. So not trying to do like a lot of personal trainers out there. So you got to have 3 things of kale, 1 stick of celery, 1 scoop of peanut butter. It's like, look, just make good choices through the day, and every so often allow yourself to splurge for the sake of sanity and the enjoyment of your life and food. So that's where I'm at now. Crazy world.
Very good. Give me just a second.